Basically, people were thinking about a change. They did it. They flipped the coin. If they got the change, they're more likely to have a change. And indeed, people who went actually and committed and did the change were happier than people who didn't. Okay, what's the difference between hope and optimism? So hope is you want something to happen in the future, right? I want to get that job. I want to find that relationship. Optimism is believing that I'm likely to get that job. I'm likely to find that wonderful relationship. And it's absolutely true that if you're optimistic, you think this is going to go somewhere good, then you're more likely to go ahead and try that, which makes sense, right? Because my expectation is going to change my actions, and my actions is going to change my outcomes, right? Because if I think, well, I'm gonna try for this competition because I think I'm likely to get something, then I go ahead and I try. If I think, well, there's no chance, I don't try, and so of course I'm not going to get it. So it's a bit of a self-fulfilling optimism. And so then the question becomes, if I go back to your question, then the question becomes, well, how do I enhance optimism, right? So there's actually, and it's a good idea, because enhancing optimism will cause you to take more risk.
I want to know how to enhance optimism in all of my team members, all of my companies.
So there's a few ways to do it. One way is a sense of control. We are more optimistic about things that we believe we have control over, because we do think that when we have control, that means we can steer the wheel in the right direction, right? And so if we can cause people to get a sense that they have control, and if it's about your team, is, for example, let's say there's a project that you want someone to work on. So you can just tell them to do that project, or you can have them choose to do that project, right? And you can guide them to the choice that you think is correct. But if they believe that they made the choice, that enhances a sense of agency, enhances a change of the sense of control, and they become more committed to that option. So you can give them, oh, well, there's two options, two projects you can work on. Which one do you prefer? And again, you can frame it in a way that maybe perhaps will make them more likely to choose one over the other. But once they made the choice, it's amazing. We've done studies on this where we give people options. For example, going on holiday. Do you want to go to France or Rome, right? Thailand or Hawaii? If they make a choice, there are two things that are exactly, they want it the same. They really want to go Hawaii. They really want to go to Florida. But once they make a choice, seconds after making a choice, they now believe that Hawaii is much better than they did just a few seconds ago before making a choice, and that Florida is not that great, right? Because once you make a choice, immediately your preferences change. You rationalize why that choice was great, and now you're more committed to it. So that's true for holidays, but it can be true for work as well, right? Should I go work on project A or B? If I make the choice, I become more committed to it, and it doesn't work if someone else makes a choice for you. If someone else makes a choice for you, don't get into this rationalization mode where you have to rationalize your choice because it wasn't your choice. And once I feel I have control, then kind of that also enhances my expectations of how good it's going to be.
But it also boosts your happiness, right? Because I read about the study in care homes where they had an agency floor and the other floor where people didn't feel like they had a lot of agency and choice over their lives. And there was a pretty significant impact on levels of happiness, right?
Yes. So what they did is they gave them some plans. Is that the study?
Yeah, that
yes, one, yeah. Yes, absolutely. So when we feel we have control, we have agency, that enhances well-being. When we feel our agency has been restricted, that causes anxiety, right? And this is one of the reasons that people are quite anxious on planes. It's not just because we fear the worst, but because we have no control at all, right? No control about where are we going to get there? What are we going to eat, right? And that causes a lot of anxiety. So by enhancing agency and control, you are lifting people's well-being, happiness, and reducing stress and anxiety. Kids and children, they're happiest and the most optimistic.
Oh.
Then it goes down and reaches rock bottom in your midlife, as well as optimism does. So actually, in middle age, you stop having an optimism bias. So your optimism bias is greatest in children and kids. It goes down, down, down. And then really, there's no optimism bias in midlife, on average, of course. And then it starts going up. You become happier and more optimistic until the last few years of life, which is counterintuitive to our image of the grumpy old man, right? And it actually stays there until the last couple years of life. The difference between countries is that the dip, the point where it's lowest, actually is a little bit different between country and country. I think in the US it's about 40. It's a relatively early. I think in the UK as well. But then some countries it's much. I think like Italy might be 50, Greece as well, like 50 to 60. And then there's a few countries where you don't see that. Russia is one of them, Romania, and I forget, there's another one where you actually don't see, they actually just become, less and less happy in those countries. We don't know why that is that specific case. It does make you happy is being in a relationship. I believe that did make, whether you were married or not married, didn't really matter. But I think being in a relationship was inducing happiness. The other kind of interesting finding about that is that how fast people get over divorce, right? That it takes, I don't know if it's fast or not, but within just before, a few years before you get divorced, happiness starts going down because, of course, there's problems, I guess, and so on. And it actually hits rock bottom just about the time that you get divorced. And then it starts going up. You start adapting, right? And in fact, goes back to baseline levels of happiness within about 2 years. I don't know, maybe 2 years is a lot, but then people bounce back. So when you kind of think about these changes, which could be negative, right? Divorce, I think people don't consider as much our ability to adapt so fast, right? To change so fast. I think COVID was a really good example of the pandemic. Before the pandemic, if I was to tell you you're going to have to stay at home and not see anyone else, and you'd be like, this is disaster. How's it going to happen? People adapted quite fast. Yes, stress. We did studies. We actually started doing studies a few weeks after the pandemic started. We did see, of course, stress and anxiety was enhanced. But not as much as we thought. And number two, the bouncing back was extremely surprising. Within just a couple of months, a lot of people were back to their baseline happiness. So adaptation is really fast. You kind of find ways to overcome these things. That being said, that was like a bird's eye view because there were parts of the population that were not doing well. Right. So if you kind of take a worm's eye view, sure. You see that, for example, people with mental health problems, pre-existing ones, they had trouble adapting to this new situation. Some, like women, actually did a little bit worse because they were probably had more of the childcare. Younger individuals did worse than older individuals, maybe because of that U-shape curve. But in general, people adapt faster than they believe they will. And I think that goes back to our question of why don't people take risks and why don't they make changes? I think because one of the reasons is they're afraid that they won't adapt to the change, right? And they underestimate how fast and how well humans adapt to changes in their environment and their situation. This is basically why our species did so well